And here I am. I hope that you can hear me just well enough. Just as much as you'd like to hear me. Great. It's nice to hear. Hello everyone, my name is Virche, and today we're playing through the visual novel autonomous video game Scien no Virche Era Salvation. We are continuing playing Scien Brofiise route, and a quick reminds on the events of the previous stream. Well, we've learned that actually the internal organization of Institute is divided on several parties. Wait. Sorry. Is divided on several parties who has slightly different interest in terms of their scientific research and in terms of their ideological beliefs. Two main groups are led by Scien Brofiise himself. Hello, Ashes. Thank you for coming. I didn't expect you to come, but I'm grateful. Nice to see you here. Then I'll repeat the rewind. In the previous series, we've learned that actually the Institute of the RP Shell is divided on several parties in terms of their research fields and their ideological background, and two main parties are led by Scien Brofiise himself and Dahat, Deputy Director Dahat. And these groups, accordingly, are a group of those who wants to improve the bodies of the relivers of the clones, so they would be more able to withstand the curse of the land, and those who want to increase memory capacity for emotions, thus making relivers more humane and as much as possible making them closer to real humans. They fight with each other quite harshly. For example, we've been told about many assassination attempts made on Scien Brofiise, and even more. On the previous stream, our protagonist, was caught and used a hostage to force Scien Brofiise to kill himself, delete his memory data so he wouldn't be able to revive as a reliver, and by the way, give all his rights to Dahat. So, aside from this, right now we're working at Scien Brofiise Institute as his personal mate, because that old geezer is actually not simply an asshole, what we have already seen before in the main route, but also can create a mess of any room in a span of several hours, which requires talent of someone as great as our protagonist Ceres to deal with. Besides, she's a clean freak, which helps quite a lot. And the last thing we've seen, during the previous stream is reveal how reliver technology was actually made and continues developing. Scien Brofiise led us to his personal laboratory, where we've seen many convicts being mercilessly tortured in the most inhuman ways. And it kinda scared our little girl, which is understandable. Although, truth be told, me and Klopp agreed that in our personal worldviews, it's not such a big thing. Well, yeah, I just yapped a little bit because they mentioned some concepts that exist in real life, but were voluntarily interpreted by that video game. But we can continue. Scien Brofiise was born as a non-human. From my earliest memories, I had learned countless facts about human with power and all other life forms besides them. A simple thought was all I needed to uncover the truth behind mysteries that others would spend their lifetimes contemplating. Which meant that it didn't take long for this isolated country to make quick advancement in culture and technology. Perhaps it was because I saw things as an observer separate from this world, as though I did not exist, a stranger who didn't belong. I was I was the manifestation of an unknown god with the same virtues and wisdom. I was the absolute Scien Brofiase. But this impersonal existence lacked something. I lacked humanity. I was able to master the minimum amount of emotions to work with those around me, but I felt no passion, love, or even hatred. My emotions were close to non existent, which resulted in a lack of empathy toward others who did not share my views.
なんて退屈な世界か。
The man who didn't shed a single tear when his mother was killed by bandits solved the world's mysteries without any feeling. It was obvious that I would be seen as an outcast or even a heretic by those around with each passing day. But I didn't have a heart that could feel pain. Still, there was one mystery that spurred me on.
俺が死神の呪いなどというくだらん迷信を打ち破り、この国の人間を生かしてやろう。俺ならば全ての生命をあらゆる可能性へと導けるはずだ。
It didn't come from kindness or compassion, but rather selfishness as a giver of wisdom. I was done with the majority of my projects and sufficiently bored, which was why I decided to save those who growled just to satisfy my selfish desires.
そう、たとえ
Even if it meant sacrificing the few for the sake of the many who would live in the future. Fortunately for me, my grandfather and my father were already working on creating clones based on the book from the Drifter. I inherited my father's facility after his death, and with the royal family's approval, began my research. The first sacrifice was a young man who tortured a woman to death simply because he wanted liquor. The next sacrifice was a lone woman near death from the curse. Some of the royal guard soldiers tried to stop me, saying that I was going against humanity.
あんたみたいな悪魔と血がつながっているだなんておぞけがするわ。
My sister praised me for my talent, but the moment she learned of my experiments, she tried to stop me from my work. I continued to pile up the bodies.
これで23年と1秒の生存。いざ迎えるとあっけないものだな。
It took only a few moments. It took only a few months to complete my reliver technology, and became subject zero to venture beyond 23 years of age. Good. And that's a nice place for me to make a short stop and ask you, every single one of you, how
こ
are you
れが
doing?
俺の名誉の裏に隠された真実。
How was your day treating you? I hope nicely, but I'd like to hear from you, because hopes are not to be trusted. Hello, Jugglers. Thank you for coming. I was just asking, how's everybody doing? And you didn't miss much, just Cian's background. Short. Cian's background.
どれだけ非道だと非難されようと、俺はこの国を真の意味で救済するまで研究をやめるつもりはない。
When you're saying so, Jugglers, when you're greeting Jugglers that way, Ashes, our Jugglers from Jugglers turns into some sort of Jugglus. Umber says, lazy one I guess, but I did something today and that is good. And you did quite a nice job, I'd say. Though I'm willing to see it finally come to fruition. Club says, surprisingly, I managed to do 2 laps. These were quite easy though. I hope there'll be no problem tomorrow. Well, I wish there won't be any problems.
それこそが俯瞰の資質を持つ優れた人間としての責務だ。
After Scien calmly finished telling me his sins, he turned his back to the devices torturing the criminals. It can't be... I missed the glossary entry. Scien Brofiise. He is lacking in most emotions, and has little interest in other people. He has been conducting inhuman experiments on prisoners bought from the royal family in order to advancement in reliable technology. He even sacrificed those he called family? I couldn't believe what I heard, and was left speechless. I probably had too much faith in Scien despite Mother's warning. Which would explain why I felt like I was betrayed by his revelation.
言っておくが、俺は悪趣味で人体実験をしていたんじゃない。あくまで効率を重視したまでのこと。ちょうど俺の寿命も迫っていたからな。他に方法がない以上、手段は選んでいられなかった。普通の寿命を持つ漂流者が雲隠れしなければ、また結果は違っていたかもしれんが。
It seemed he was implying that he would have used the Drifter as a test subject. The Drifter was the benefactor who gave your family the information needed to get to this point, right?
それは祖父の話だろ。俺には関係ない。
Also, hello, Lost Heart, if you're here. You don't have to, but if you are here, I'll be glad to see you in the chat. He didn't even bother hiding his thoughts. Cian's voice and expression were much colder than before, as if he saw me as just another one of his expendable resources. But you don't need to conduct tests on humans anymore, now that reliable technology is done, right? Thank you for coming, Lost. So, why are you conducting these experiments? continue these experiments.
お前は以前俺が語ったことを忘れたか？知っての通り、俺の専門は死の呪いに耐えうる優れたクローン体を効率よく作成するリライバー技術の研究だ。この国に救う死神の呪いを完全に打破する方法を探すこと、つまり根本的な解決こそが俺の最終的な目標だ。リライバー技術による延命は所詮時間稼ぎに過ぎないのだからな。何が救いだ、つまらんな。これは実質ただの延命処置だろう。バカバカしい。死神の呪いなどあるものか。今やこの世を滑るのは神などではなく人間の英知であり、すべての不可解には理由がある。余計な感情などすべて切り捨て、呪いとやらに挑んでやる。
But the unique feature of a reliver at my short lifespan thwarted my mission. Any strong emotions I once felt completely disappeared once I transformed to a clone. In other words,
オリジナル、生身の時に有していた感性、ひらめきといった感覚までもが持続されず、完全に初期化されてしまうわけだ。その場合、積み上げてきた成長をまた最初から歩み直す必要があるが、俺は毎回次の領域に至る寸前で寿命を迎えて力尽きる。
if I could live 5 years longer, no, if I could somehow extend my life by just a year, my brain would surely reach the answer for which I had long been searching. But each time I updated the clone bodies, it only resulted in insignificant modification. Once I understood that my efforts were failing, it was then that I finally tasted what one would call defeat. Which is why you're focused on reliable longevity.
ああ、一応この肉体もその研究内容を反映したものだ。特殊な薬を飲むことで肺の機能を強化、寿命の直前に現れる呼吸困難などが表面化しづらくなっている。
Huh? So, do you mean your current body is almost 23 years old?
そうだな。時期としてはいつ心臓が止まってもおかしくない。
But if that's the case, shouldn't you be helping the heart with his research so that you can get your brain to work like before?
もしも実現させたら思考を妨げる余計な感情、特に恋愛感情までついてくる。
Quite charming man, dare I say.
結果研究の効率が落ちては本末転倒だろう。誰が好き好んで自分の能力を落とすような真似をするか。
Scien then glanced at the criminals who were clearly in a great deal of pain.
命を救おうとすることがすなわち善性ではないということは、この光景を見て思い知ったな。
Just as I nodded in acknowledgement, something happened to one of the prisoners. So that's, says Ashes, why his name is, indelibly in my head, Brofiise. He strengthens his body to make it swell. Well, actually, yes, to some extent. Though I would say he is more of a self-obsessed person, but yes. Without a sound, the man disappeared into nothing, not even leaving behind a trace of a double helix. Uh, I somehow kept from screaming. So these are the results of the responsibility that Scien mentioned. The technology I looked up to as a miracle from God. It was built on the backs of living sacrifice who suffered excruciating pain. I forcefully suppressed my tears as I swallowed the truth I didn't want to learn.
それを伝えるため妙に懐きかけていたお前をこの場に連れてきた。常識も感情も倫理も俺にとっては全てどうでもいいこと。間違っても俺を善人などと盲信してくれるな。俺は好奇心という名の欲望に忠実な運よく裁かれない権力を手にしただけの
Smug old bastard.
神の名を語るただの罪人だ。
But he's funny. I somehow stumbled to an area where I could feel the cool night air. I wasn't sure exactly how I got here, but...
お疲れ様です。ねぎらってもらうはずが嫌なお話を聞かせちゃいましたね。
The hut greeted me with a troubled smile. He led us to a corner of the institute where we could sit down on a bench.
気分はどうですか？吐きたいとかあれば遠慮なく言ってくださいね。
Thank you very much, but I'm fine for now.
例の変死事件とかでなんやかんや死体への耐性がついちゃったんですかね。だとしてもシアンさんの対応は間違いなく0点ですけど、なんで食事をご馳走するはずが僕でさえうえーってなる光景をお披露目してるんですかね。教えるにしてもデータを見せるだけにとどめておくとか、もうちょっと他にやりようが。
No, it's my fault. I somehow managed to speak as the hut puffed out his cheeks with frustration. I'm sure Scien noticed that I saw him as someone good and kind. Eve and Mother gave me their warnings. Even Scien made it very clear from the start what kind of a person he was. Scien was just looking for a maid, and my respect for him betrayed his expectations. Which is why I think Scien went to the trouble of showing me that, to break my image in the most efficient way possible. And he did it without a second thought. Dad, did you know he was conducting his experiments on living people? Asha says, earlier the way the prisoner disappeared sounded like a good threat, really. I raise you from the face of the earth without even a helix left. Okay, yes, it is. At the same time, I would say it's a fate to be desired. To be erased without any trace. Yeah, DNA, double helix. Двойная спираль ДНК.
一応は研究所内では暗黙の了解となってます。僕自身は手を染めたくありませんけど、結果的にこの国の人々が助かってるんですから、文句を言うこともできなくて。
The hut then clapped his hands as if he had an idea of what would put Scien in a good light.
一応シアンさんも優先的に実験体にする人間は選んでるんですよ。今日来た罪人の人たちなんか女の人を何人も殺したり強盗をしたりな同情の余地すらないゲスばっかりでしたから。 昔ならいざ知らず、今はもう罪のない人を進んで犠牲に。えーっと、これじゃあ慰めになってませんよね。
That is such a sweet bond. I know that you respect Scien, Dad. I finally smiled, seeing Dad look at me with sad puppy eyes. It always struck me as amazing that you're his subordinate, and his enemy, and his friend. You two have a unique relationship. Is there a particular reason why you stay with him?
そうですね。やっぱり一階の研究者としては彼の頭脳に憧れちゃいますし、あとは単純にシアンさんの容姿ですかね。
Looks?
髪の色です。あの淡い髪色が僕の亡くなった母親とちょっと似てるんですよ。だからちょっと親近感みたいなのを感じて、ついついお世話を焼いちゃうんです。
Your mother's hair color is similar to Cian's hair color? Come to think of it, I do remember your subordinate yelling something about her during all the commotions. Okay, Joglus, we finished bad side of 2 routes. We finished Mathis Claude route, well, bad ends. We finished Lucas Proust route, bad ends. Right now we are finishing going through Scien Brofiise route, bad ends. Then there will be bad ends for Eve's route, and then there will be bad ends for routes of Anku and Adolphe. And only then we will have good ends, which will we play in the same order. I'm sorry. Should I have not said anything?
いえいえ。ありきたりなお話なので、逆にどう説明したものか悩んじゃっただけですよ。別に隠すことでもありませんし、普通にお話しします。
Dahad looked up at the night sky, then began to explain why he was working as a researcher. The reason my mother passed away wasn't something unusual. She only died because she didn't make it in time to become a reliver. See? Simple, right? This was something common throughout Arpachel. Though there was one unusual thing that made her death different. She didn't rely on reliable technology, and she didn't lament over how short her life would be, unlike the society of exorcists. She actually longed to live life as a normal human by trying to find a way to get rid of the curse. I want to continue to live without losing the same hands that held you. You couldn't imagine how happy I was when she said this to me. I was proud of my mother, who actually respected what little life we had.
その気持ちは今でも変わりません。だからそんな優しい母と再会したくて、僕は研究者になったんですよ。ですが現状の技術で母を蘇らせても彼女の望まぬ形になってしまうから、今はちょっと保留中です。せめてメモリーの改良が済むまで感動の再会はお預けですね。
Dahad smiled innocently. His desire was a unique one. He held on to a beautiful, precious wish to one day reunite with his mother.
器に重きを置くシアンさんに対し、僕は人間の定義を知、肉体、精神、揃ってこそだと紐付けています。ですが呪いによってどうしても肉体を捨てなければならないのなら、せめて精神だけでも 母が憧れた普通の人間に近づけてあげたいと思いまして。
That's a wonderful dream. I'm sure it will happen, Dad. Joglus is a little disappointed by lack of Yorirud, which is understandable. We all would like Ceres to date Salome. But I'll tell you honestly, it's extremely rare for a visual novel to have romantic roots with characters of different genders, especially for Japanese visual novels. Usually it's like strictly separated. Yuri is for Yuri, Yaoi is for Yaoi, Otome is for heterosexual couples of women and jobless drug addicts or abusers, and well, when it comes to male-oriented visual novels, it's a little bit more weird, but pretty much similar. I'll go grab some tea, says the club. Was sitting with my classmates for a few hours after finishing labs, and then proceeded to battle one guy in D&D 5. One of us being Monster and the other being my barbarian Boris. I do remember Boris. Yes, I was really bored, and this guy is still trying to get me to play with him. He's actually done okay there. Could have been worse. I can work with that if I want. How to say it, Jugglers? I've seen visual novels where bisexual are depicted in neutral or positive light, but to play as one, it's rare. Like, it's really rare. It happens, but it is rare. But if you want, I can specifically for you look for something like this. I hope Scien would help you reach your goal one day.
ありがとうございます。それまで第一版が取り潰されないように。本当はね、方法自体は思いついてるんです。感情を司るメモリー。心臓の容量を増やし、強化してあげればいい。感情を得た多くの心臓をつなぎ合わせることで、さらなる人工心臓を作る。
But the fact is, it hasn't been done means...
リライバーの心臓は、ただの心臓ではダメだから。一つ作るのに、膨大な手間と犠牲が出てしまいます。そもそも記憶のダウンロードは本人の心臓にしかできませんしね。臓器にだって適合不適合というものがあります。他にもたくさんの問題があるから。
It seemed he didn't have the power to conduct the level of research required. Dahat looked up into the sky and let out a sigh.
はあ、真っ向での勝負が叶わないのなら、いっそ僕も後ろ盾作ろうかな。シアンさんの代理で外部対応してるうちに、王族の方々に結構気に入られちゃったんですよね。ほら、僕ってば可愛げがあるので。
But wouldn't doing that make Scien angrier than necessary?
ですね。シアンさんは王族の人たちが大大大大大大の大嫌いですし。
And he has his reasons. And I'd say almost every character in this game, like on every level, has reason to hate royal family. both general and personal. Quite relatable. After swinging his legs for a bit, the hut quickly hopped off the bench.
話がそれちゃいましたけど、少しは気が晴れました？
Yes, thank you very much for spending time with me. But I did leave without asking him what I should do tomorrow. I guess I'll stay at the orphanage for a while and spend some time thinking.
ええ、僕もそれがいいと思います。ですが、お別れの前に一点だけ、僕はあなたがシアンさんの期待を裏切っただなんて思っていませんよ。だってシアンさんってば。研究員ならシアンさんの持つ才能とそれに向けられる尊敬によって御すことができるでしょうけど、彼女はあくまで一般人なんですから。
面倒くさい。
はあ、もういいです。そんなに彼女から愛想をつかされたいのならどうぞご自由に。って感じで、僕の脅しにちょこっと動揺してましたもん。
Huh?
シアンさんの思考回路は謎すぎて、付き合いの長い僕も理解できません。ですが、少なくともあの人が今まで突き放してきた人間たちとは違う立ち位置にいると思います。手放すのが惜しいと無自覚に思ってしまうほどには。
The hut stretched his arms wide and spun around on the spot.
どうせあの人の考えていることなんて分かりませんし、ガンガンうぬぼれていいんじゃないですか。それこそ自分の影響で彼が非人道的な実験をやめてくれるかもなんて、愛の奇跡を高望みしても OK です。
I could tell I was blushing from hearing the hut's innocent words. Laugh, but I don't have those kinds of feelings for Scien. How in the world did you come up with that idea anyway?
シアンさんが女性をそばに置くってこと自体前例がないというか、天変地異の前触れなんですよ。僕からすればリライバー技術の開発より革命的な事件です。
Stop joking around.
大げさでいいじゃないですか。もうこの際あの人の意味深な言動は全部前向きに捉えましょう。
He smiled like an angel.
セレスさん、もしもあなたが考えた末にあの人を地上に下ろしたいと思ったなら、その時は僕も全力でお手伝いします。全力で神様を気取るあの人を引きずり下ろしてやりましょうよ。
The hut boldly demonstrated his plan to rebel against God. The terribly long day finally came to an end. I fell into my bed as though I would never wake up again. Or at least that's what I thought. I can't sleep. My mind held onto the sickening sight, and I felt nausea and tears well up inside me. I never thought a person could completely disappear into dust, jeans, and all. There was no way I could get it out of mind. I got up and went to the kitchen to try and settle my stomach with a glass of water. It turned out someone was there, ahead of me.
やっぱり来たわね、セレス。
Club and Joy, I know you like it.
深夜遅くに帰ってきたと思ったら、ひどい顔色で部屋にこもるから心配していたのよ。
Mother. She probably knew I was going to come, as she already had 2 cups of hot milk ready.
さあ、怒らないから席に座りなさい。
Sorry, I missed it. Mother gracefully handed me one of them.
大方あの人でなしが、とうとうあなたに何かしでかしたんでしょ？
You're right. I guess I can't hide anything from you, Mother. The gentle steam rising from the milk slowly comforted my soul. I told Mother what happened at the institute without describing the actual details.
そう。あいつがわざわざ自分から明かすとは、さすがに予想外だったわ。でもこれで、私の警告の意味が理解できたでしょ？
Yes, you knew everything, didn't you, Mother? Mother gave a small nod in response.
私は彼に続く最初期に生み出されたリライバーの一人で、セルネボルに近い場所に住んでいたから、その縁で偶然彼の所業を知る機会があったのよ。
Does anyone else know what he does?
一般人では私だけじゃないかしら。彼は別に隠すつもりはなくて、公表しても構わないと。さすがに王族が人体実験に協力しているなんて公になったらね。
The resulting chaos would be trouble.
何せ狭い国だもの。大規模な暴動一つで滅びかねないわ。そういう理由もあって、あなたにも事情を話すことができなかったの。不安にさせてごめんなさいね。
Joklos says, Damn, I envy those who likes tea. Drink as much as you want. I was my coffee have tremor after the third cup already. No, if you didn't give me your warning, my relationship with Scien would have ended much sooner. I wonder if what Anku told me before was related to this.
私としては、ぜひそのまま破綻して関係を断ってほしいところだけど、知人が罪を犯していたなんて、そう簡単に割り切れるようなことじゃないんでしょうね。
She spoke in a joking way, but the words themselves were serious. Mother took a sip of hot milk, then looked at me with a serious expression.
結局、どうするの？あの男の本性を知ってもなお、あなたは使いたいと思う？
I don't think I have a choice since I need to keep working for him in order to pay off the bracelet.
こらこら、何のために母がいると思ってるの？あなたが嫌なら、私があの男にガツンと言ってあげるから。あなたはあなたのしたいようにしなさい。
Mother laughed, saying that he wouldn't dare do anything against her. Her words were so kind and thoughtful. I don't know. I felt myself relying on her like a child. I looked down as my body shook, and the tears that welled up in my eyes slowly fell into the milk and disappeared. I've always relied on others my whole life, but now I'm serving Scien because he asked for my help. He might not talk much, but I was content. I was happy. Even if it was only for a short time. I wanted to do what I could for him. Those are my honest feelings. And yet... But when I saw Scien abusing other humans without a thought, like their lives didn't matter, it was then that I realized how scary he really is. I must look like a master mother right now. I have spread my fair share of misfortune onto others, bringing many to their death. But I was actually scared now, blaming Scien without looking at what I had done myself. I knew I was behind, extremely selfish, yet I'm afraid of Scien. But his eyes, the way he looks at things subjectively, evaluating their true value as an observer, it's so beautiful. I really don't want to lose my opportunity to see his vision at work. Hearing my honest stream of thought, Mother looked surprised.
あなたのことをまっすぐに見てくれる人は他にもたくさんいると思うけれど、それこそシアンよりも優しくて素敵な男性は他にも山のようにいるんじゃ。
In fact, nearly all of them. Of course, I know. I mean, Adolf and others look at me and treat me like a normal person. But he's different. To be honest, I wasn't entirely sure why I was so drawn to Scien. He wasn't a good person, he wasn't kind. On the contrary, he was quite unreasonable, threatening to fire or execute anyone who let their guard down around him. I'm sorry, Mother. I'm not making any sense, am I?
いいのよ。すぐに答えが出せる問題じゃないわ。けれど悩むなら悪夢に見るほど悩み抜きなさい。苦しくなったら私が無理にでも起こしてまたホットミルクを入れてあげるから。
Okay. Thank you very much, Mother. Another teardrop nearly fell when I heard Mother carrying words. But I held my tears back, not wanting her to continue consoling a crybaby like me. Should I return to Scien or not? I said I didn't have a choice, but I knew that Scien wouldn't say anything if I decided to leave. After all, forcing me to work against my will would only reduce his efficiency. He would probably shrug and let me go without asking me to pay up, saying it was no use hiring someone who wasn't motivated. It's pretty sad that I can see that happening. He wouldn't let me see a sliver of my image of him. Not in the slightest. He really is cruel.
ぐるぐるぐるぐる回り続ける。人の心は花びらのよう。風向き次第でくるりころりと気分を変える。裏切られた女は災いの花園にて叫んだ。いつか必ず奴らに報いを。
After that needless commotion, I went back to check in the results of my experiments. My eyes stayed fixed as I extended my left hand out for my meal. A few seconds passed, but I still felt nothing in my hand. When I shifted my gaze to my side, I saw an open space with no one around. The girl who handed me my food without my needing to say a word wasn't here.
ああ、そうか。
She hadn't returned to the institute after I showed her who I truly was.
一度あの利便性に慣れてしまうと自分で用意するのが面倒だな。
With no other choice, I reached down to pick up some bread from the floor when I heard commotion and footsteps outside.
シアン社長、大変です。
One of my subordinates cut into my system screen.
なんだ騒がしい。俺はしばらく部屋にこもると通達しておいただろうが。
訳ありません。ですがこれはもう私たちではどうしようもなくて、突然事前の連絡もなく訪れた王族の一人が無理やり装置を操作して自分のリライバーを作成しようとしてるんです。
Here we go again. I can't seem to get my mind off Scien. I still needed time to think about how I should face him. I found myself here unable to settle my mind ever since I woke up this morning. I really didn't know why I came here. But it's unprofessional of me to take days off without letting him know. I guess I'll try ask how Scien's doing and maybe leave a message for him. I convinced myself and headed into the institute. In my hand was my usual basket, a basket stuffed with sandwiches, which I made without much thought. I entered and found myself greeted not by one of the staff, but rather an unusual sound of destruction unfitting of the mystical technology housed here. I looked around, wondering what was going on. There was a huge crowd of people gathered around one of the devices that contained the backup data of the people of this country. In the ground I
貴
found...
様らよりにもよって尊き王族の血を引く閣下の命を軽んじるとはよほど不敬罪で牢獄につながれたいようだな。
In the laboratory was a member of the Royal Guard, which was rarely ever let inside.
いえ、決してそのようなことは。我らはアルペシエールに揺るがぬ忠誠を誓っております。しかし我々も所長の許可なくリライバー化の順番を覆すわけには。
シアンブロフィアーズのこまめがマニュアル通りの対応しかできんのか。
The man pressuring the researchers was rubbing his rounded stomach. So, you see, I hid behind the door, observing the situation from a distance. He had the Royal Guard at his command, and that soldier just called him Highness? It couldn't be. I had never seen one of the royals before. I heard they were all early relivers who regularly extended their lives since the technology was born. I was a royal, rarely seen outside the castle in a place like this.
それに閣下の現在の肉体はまだ呪いに蝕まれていない健康体のはずでは。
アップデートされたシステムとやらでより優れた肉体を作り出すために決まっているだろう。
I see. I felt bothered by his reasoning. Reliable technology is meant to extend a person's life, not be used in a whim. Of course, I understood there were people who had priority like Scien. Compared to us, normal citizens, it made sense that the royal family would have more frequent backups. It seems the researchers were unable to do anything out of fear of defying his unreasonable demand.
閣下の願いとあらば我らとしてもぜひ叶えたいのですが、緊急時以外のバックアップないしリライバー化はたとえ王族であろうとも例外は認めず、確定した新生順を最優先にと所長も。
貴様ら私よりもシアンブロフィアーズの命令を優先するというのか。
The Royal Guard soldiers drew their swords and pointed them at the researcher's throat. Huh? That was completely uncalled for. It was possible he didn't have a backup yet, as he shook while trying to explain his reasoning.
申し訳ありません閣下。一階の研究者の身で言葉が過ぎました。ですが現在すべての装置にはすでに申請者が生産準備に入っておりまして。
ふん、そんなもの中断すればいい話だろう。
The researcher looked stunned as the relic walked past him toward the floating orb in the room. Already knew that inside was a new life, waiting for the right time to awaken. Huh? What's he trying to do? I had a bad feeling about this. The man spread his hand open. One of the soldiers next to him handed him his sword, scabbard and all. He drew the sword out of the scabbard without a thought, then stared at the blade. It couldn't be. Everyone immediately knew what he was going to do.
閣下まさか
Asha says, killing the researchers will definitely speed up the process, yes. You could have guessed that local nobility somehow lacks the brain cells and brain functions necessary for proper reasoning. Something you can see in many leaders and generally many people across the media or real life.
なーに、実験体を一人消費したところであの悪魔も口を出さんだろう。どうせ培養機くらいなら壊したところでいくらでも予備はあるのだろう。その席を私に譲れることを光栄に思いながら行け。どこの誰とも知れぬ下船の輩が。
It's the researchers' fault, you see. They created body for the nobility that had wholly deficient prefrontal function. I would disagree here because bodies are generally and inevitably based on the original body of the person, and a significant portion of improvement, majority of improvement, especially brain improvement, cannot be implemented exactly due to the reason of incompatibility with the original mind and the body of the clone. As such, you can't give a body with a damaged prefrontal function, especially dorsal prefrontal cortex function, to the one who lacked it in original life, and as well, you will have real problems damaging that function in those who was quite proficient in using it. The man from the royal family stood in front of the tank, then raised his sword up high. Stop! Stop! I quickly ran toward the man before he could swing the sword down. Please stop! I jumped on the man's arm to push it down.
なんだ貴様は。この私を一体誰だと。
The soldiers around us quickly drew their swords and pointed them at me, but I didn't have time to be scared. I understood how rude I am. I will accept my punishment later. But please put down the sword. The person in there is someone who spent their entire life to earn the money needed to extend their life. The researchers all went pale as they saw me use force against the royal family. There was only one person who could actually go up against the royal family. Someone else trying to find them will only lead to the inevitable. I knew that very well from the experience and from hearing what happened to the others. Even so, this man was born to rule and protect this country and its people. I tried to convince myself with all my might that he would actually listen, but
うせろ。汚らわしい小娘が。
I felt a sharp pain across my cheek. The powerful blow made my vision flicker, and before I knew it, I was on the floor. It took me a few seconds to realize that one of the soldiers had punched me.
貴様の処分は新しい肉体を得た後に下す。
The sword I had pushed down was raised high once again. Stop! My attempt to stop him ended in futility. The growing life I didn't know. I heard it shatter in an instant. In place of that person's scream was an organic alarm. The broken shell let out the clear liquid, but that was all that came out. Meaning, the clone body being prepared for the future reliver passed away before the process was complete. Backup. The backup. Where is their memory and gene backup? I somehow struggled to get up and quickly questioned the researcher next to me.
残ってない。もうクローン体に記憶をダウンロードした後だったんだ。
Memory data cannot be used once again. Memory data cannot be used again once it is transferred to a clone body. But, in other words, it was too late. The person inside didn't die from the curse. Instead, they died because a member of the royal family saw his life as more important. This is horrible.
よし、これで席が一つ空いたな。さっさと中のゴミを片付けて、私にリライバー化の処置を施せ。
Kinda. Well, as far as I know, it was intended measure. It's part of a safety measure. The soldiers accepted this word from him, then took a step forward to pressure the researchers. But no one was able to react properly after seeing the tragedy unfold.
何をしている？
That voice. I quickly turned around to see Scien, along with a number of researchers behind him. He must have already known as he looked around with terribly cold eyes. He first looked at the man and his soldiers, then at the broken incubator. Finally, he saw me slouch on the floor.
ああ、シアン殿、わざわざ来てくださったのか。実は今日はシアン殿に頼みたいことがあり出向いたのだ。リライバーの研究もシアン殿のご尽力により日に日に進んでいると聞いている。そこでちょうど培養機も一つ空いたことだし、私もその恩恵を享受できればと思ってな。
お前、今何をした？
He probably didn't understand why Scien was asking the question. The expression on the royal face was suddenly struck by surprise. With a sweep of Scien's leg, the royal was thrown off balance and fell flat on the floor.
いきなり何をするのだ、シアン殿。
The man slowly tried to get up from the floor with confusion over what was happening. Scien followed it with a powerful kick straight to the man's head.
やべ。
Scien kicked his head over and over without a change in expression, then stomped down on it hard. He continued to attack as if he was trying to break the man's skull. Everyone in the room, including myself, were in complete shock, unable to say a word.
やめろ。なぜこんなことを。
わめくな、汚らわしい。いいか？リライバー技術は例外を除けば死を目前にした者にのみ延命として提供するものだ。リライバーとして新たな生を得たいのなら一度死んでもらうか。体の乗り換えが必要になるくらい衰弱してもらうしかない。俺はその条件を満たしてやろうとしているだけだ。感謝してほしいものだな。
Scien then kicked the man from the royal family in the stomach, as if to finish the job. The blow made the man spill out bile onto the floor. Finally released from the siege, he held his temple to stop the bleeding as he slowly got up.
貴様、王族たるこの私にこんな真似をしていいと思っているのか。
当然だろう。研究の邪魔をするのなら王族だろうが誰だろうが関係ない。ただ排除するだけだ。そうだな。この度の損害の責任としてシステムにお前の遺伝子を永久的にブロックするよう設定してやろうか。
Which means if he's placing a block in the system, it sounded like he wouldn't ever let the man upload another backup or create a clone from now on. In other words, it was a death sentence. After a few seconds, the stunned royal slowly went pale as he realized what happened. Scien didn't joke around. He was already at it, doing something with the system. The man quickly growled to Scien.
許してくれ。研究を邪魔するつもりはなかったんだ。今より頑丈な肉体が欲しかっただけで。壊してしまった機材も弁償する。生成を邪魔してしまった国民にも何らかの形で損失を補填する。だから
俺の雑用係を殴ったことは無視か。何にせよもう決めたことだ。せいぜい残り数年程度の短い命、適当に権威を振り回して好き勝手に生きるといい。
そんな。
The man's face showed utter despair.
ほら、片付けの邪魔だ。さっさと出て行け。
The man got up with his head down and left the laboratory with the royal guard looking on with concern. The clamor that filled the room quickly fell silent, but that didn't seem to bother Scien at all.
靴が汚れたな。
After finishing whatever he was inputting, he tapped the tip of his shoes against the floor to shake off the blood.
お前ら、ぼさっとしてないでさっさと仕事をしろ。培養機が一つ壊れてしまったのが痛い。即刻予備の装置に付け替えろ。次のリライバー生成に入る。
Despite his order, the researchers around him simply stood there, holding their breath. It was as though they couldn't move. In front of them were the remains of the incubator, and their eyes were fixed upon what was inside. What are they? I held my cheek as the pain slowly subsided and turned in the direction they were looking. There was a single lump of flesh belonging to the life that was ended by the royal family. It must have been because the cloning was halted partway. The lump was pulsating and shaking, as if communicating something. Even without a brain, it was like the owner of the body was struggling to break out and become a reliver. But it's no use.
ち、どいつも役に立たないな。もういい。俺が片付ける。
After clicking his tongue, Scien stepped inside the broken incubator by himself. After pulling disposable gloves from his hands, he tried to drag it out. I'll help too. I also put on disposable gloves from nearby and went in to help Scien. I grabbed the other side of the bloody mass to help support Scien in lifting it out. I could feel through my gloves the person
お優しいことだ。それとも死神は死体を見慣れているか？
No, I'm not used to this at all. I'm always afraid of death. I don't like to look at corpses, but I wasn't able to stop that man from breaking the incubator. The result was this person's death, so I want to make amends however I can. If I turn my eyes away from the body now, I'm going to end up hating myself even more. In other words, it was to alleviate my guilt. We ended up carrying the remains and placing them in the corner of the laboratory. It seemed that the body would be taken away like the others. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't able to save you. I covered the body with a sheet so they could pass away in privacy.
所長、外で待っている遺族たちには何と伝えたら。
ありのままを伝えろ。生成途中にアクシデントが発生して死亡してしまったと。
しかし、それでは。
ごまかしたところでどうにもならん。誓約書にも不慮の事故には対応できないと記載されているから問題はない。
そうですか。わかりました。
Researcher's shoulders dropped as he left to carry out Scien's instructions. The other researchers looked on with perplexed expressions. Take care, Ashes. I'm grateful for you finding some time to come here. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will have some time to rest and do something for yourself. Scien cracked his neck to loosen his muscles, then turned toward me.
来い。
Huh? Scien suddenly grabbed my arm and, without waiting for a reply, dragged me towards the exit. Wait a moment, Scien. Where are we going? I quickly grabbed what I brought with me. Instead of guiding me, he dragged me out of the laboratory as the researchers looked on with awe. I was dragged back to Scien's personal room. From among the towering pile of belongings, Scien brought out a medicine box. He tended to my injury with skilled hands. I thought he was going to go straight back to his research. This is really unexpected.
あとはこのテープを貼っておけ。透明だから目立たないはずだ。
Tape? It looked like a thin bandage. I'm fine, really. I get hurt a lot anyway.
お前ここがどこなのか分かっていないようだな。その傷口から菌が入って妙な感染症になっても知らんぞ。
Thank you very much for your offer. I quickly changed my opinion and took the tape from Scien, after which he quietly headed down to the corner of the room. I looked at him from behind and placed the tape across my wound. Wait a minute. He is actually worried about me? Scien? Worried about a mate like me? I touched the piece of tape that I placed across my cheek with a strange sensation running through me.
何変な顔をしている。傷が痛むのならさっさとこれで冷やせ。
Thank you very much. I could only give him my awkward thanks in response to his surprising actions. I looked down and took a few breaths so that I could properly express my gratitude. Huh? Is this? I suddenly remembered why I came here, seeing the basket filled with sandwiches near my feet. Just before we left the laboratory, I had quickly grabbed the basket since I wasn't sure how long we would be gone. Thank you very much for helping me. I know this isn't much to show my thanks, but this is for you. I picked up the basket and handed it to Scien.
なんだ
What's that? It's what I've been serving you. I slowly lifted the cover from the basket and confirmed that I had the sandwiches inside. Thank goodness they're safe. I was worried that would all be a mess after earlier. And then again, I wasn't really sure how hungry he was after all that commotion. But this was about the only thing I could give him now to show my gratitude. Scien looked at the sandwiches inside the basket, then looked at me.
お前、正気か？
Huh?
前に話したことを忘れたか？それとも見て見ぬふりをするつもりか？まさか、すべて受け入れたとでも？
Well, the question he asked me that night came weirdly back to mind. His cruel experiments on living humans. Scien said himself that he was a sinner who did it all without concern. So why was I still serving him after seeing who he really was? Welcome back, Club. I'm glad you survived the tea. That was what Scien was asking me now. I don't know what kind of response is correct in Scien's mind, but I needed to be honest as possible. Okay. If you're referring to that, then I still haven't decided. Yeah, I do remember a lot. I do. Thank you. I understand why you're doing it and that it's required to keep the people of this country alive. But at the same time, I also can't forgive you for what you're doing, using them as test subjects, even if they're evil criminals.
普通の人間ならそうだろうな。
Which is why I don't think I can answer whether I want to continue serving you or not. At least until a few minutes ago.
何？
For some reason, I was nervous expressing every word. I took another deep breath and made up my mind, placing my hands on my chest. Please, let me keep working with you. I gave him my answer. It was true that Scien was conducting horrible experiments in the name of research, but Scien, you were the first person to extend their hand to the person in the capsule who could no longer become a reliver. Even if it wasn't out of kindness, even if it was only for efficiency's sake, I still look up to you from the bottom of my heart for being so straightforward when it comes to life and death. Which was why I couldn't turn my back on him. Furthermore, I still haven't paid back the money I owe you. Scien went quiet hearing my response. Did I just say something I shouldn't have? I'd better come up with a different reason. Perhaps I can say something along the lines of finding the work a challenge. And I thought your room might get messy like before, and you might not be eating well. The thought made me more restless than afraid, so he isn't responding. Maybe he's disgusted that I'm not outright supporting his experiments. I couldn't turn back now, but I could tell I was getting even more confused as I tried to find reason to justify my decision. And the puzzle, that's right. I want to see that puzzle completed, so I'd like to stay here until the puzzle's done. I said something very personal that had nothing to do with the discussion. I suddenly went pale, realizing what I said. I was going to refuse. I shut my eyes tightly, expecting Scien to sigh and tell me I was fired. But no matter how long I waited, I didn't hear him respond with his cold voice. I slowly opened my eyes. Just as I opened my eyes so that I could see, Scien chuckled. Huh? Was he laughing? After seeing me surprised, he calmly headed back to his usual seat. Without a word, he beckoned me over.
ほら、さっさとそのサンドイッチをよこせ。全自動サンドイッチ供給機。
Yes, automated sandwich dispenser. Привет, мои дорогие и абсолютно разумные автоматические раздатчики сэндвичей. Well, we're screenshotting that. Mm-hmm. This. Окей, вот с задержкой так. This. Like this. Yeah. Good. Let me turn my model back. Sorry. He was taking me back? Scien's insulting words slowly sank into my heart. Considering Scien, yes. He really was going to take me back. Okay. I was filled with joy the moment I finally understood what happened. I quickly walked over to him with a basket in hand. Here you go. I gave him a sandwich with the same ingredients as when I first made them for him. So, have I been promoted from a maid to a sandwich dispenser? Okay. That also should be. Well, no. Hmm. Yeah, the model. The model. This. So, I have been promoted from a maid to a sandwich dispenser?
アホ。そんな役職あってたまるか。
I guess you're right. Okay, but can you put it in words? Why do you hate him? Scien wasn't showing a different expression from before, but he still accepted the sandwich I handed to him. The words he uttered were the coldest and the most unfeeling of anyone in the country, yet they still warmed my heart. I actually have the right to hand Scien the food that I prepared. Perhaps it was my ego. I'm probably the only one with that right. I was providing him sustenance to what he could so that he could continue his important work. I couldn't be any prouder of myself. Night had arrived. Simon Riverbois, who caused a commotion earlier in the day, walked alone from the castle to the institute. The reason was simple. He was heading back to negotiate with Scien about unblocking his reliable rights. Well, he did. Wait, did you like Ceres? I didn't caught that. Didn't know that.
くそ、まだ頭蓋が痛む。シアンめ、このような目に遭わせておいて、本当に私の遺伝子をブロックするとは。許してなるものか。あの男、60年前からことごとく我らをコケにしよって。
His frustration towards Scien was at its peak, but no matter how much he pleaded, he would never revive as a reliver again, because this country's god had deemed it so. Simply seeking absolution for what he had done wouldn't change anything. He knew that very well, which was why he held his head in his hands.
誰だ?
The man from the royal family quickly turned around and looked at the shadow behind the pillar where the voice came from.
誰だお前は。
A reliver with beautiful hair appeared. He smiled at Simon, then pushed a stack of papers into his hand.
なんだこの資料は。研究資料なんかを見ても。
Simon's expression suddenly changed the moment he saw the header on the top page.
肺を強化したリライバーの理論書。おい、これは画期的な発明じゃないか。これが実現化すれば寿命も伸びるんじゃ。いや、だが私には関係のない話だ。システムにブロックされている私では新たなバージョンのリライバーになれない。
The shadow whispered to the man, saying that Scien Brofiise would allow him revive again if he cooperated with this experiment.
なんだと。その程度いくらでも協力しよう。だからすぐに私のクローンを作成しろ。肺が強化されたリライバーとして再び生まれ変わらせてくれ。
Nobody's looking at you. I'm breathing just because I'm still alive. And it's taken its toll. It is taking its toll on me and my body. I don't need a death curse to feel like my lungs are rotting from inside. A few days passed since Scien promoted me to automated sandwich to automated sandwich dispenser. I was going about my day as usual. I wonder what kind of sandwich I should make for today. Vegetables aren't delicious, but he should have some meat too. I initially began preparing food for my own reasons, but it took on different meaning now that I knew Sia and looked forward to them. Cian was smiling. It wasn't his usual mocking smile, but a very natural one. I guess he feels more comfortable around me now. That'd be so nice if it were true.
セレス、今日も研究所に行くの？
As I continued with a smile on my face, Mother peeked and struck up a conversation. Yes, that's my plan. There are a lot of chores I need to take care of. Wait a second, I need to.
あの日、研究所から帰ってきたあなたから、あのろくでなしのもとでもう一度働くって聞いたときは、本当に驚いたけど、やっぱり親としては複雑ね。
I'm sorry. And after you spent so much time talking to me about your concerns.
いいのよ。悩み抜いた末に出した答えなのでしょ。私が口を出すようなことじゃないわ。
Mother sighed and said that she was still concerned since it was Cian.
今研究所がどうかとか聞こえたが、そういえば君研究所に通っているんだよね。でも今日は行かない方がいいかもしれないよ。
She does. Johnny Sarah is an extremely caring person. I like her as a protagonist. Well, I am slightly further from the mic right now. But what is important is that right now my position is much more comfortable. So as long as you can hear me clearly. Adolphe, Eve. Through the door came Adolphe after his overnight shift, and Eve peeking in from the side. I stopped my preparations and wiped my hands. What brings you to here? Why shouldn't you go to the institute today?
例の変死事件がシュディでも起きた。残された遺族がろくな調査をしない国に直接抗議しに行くって噂だ。お前は前の事件の時に犯人じゃないかって疑われてたんだ。何かあってからじゃ遅いだろ。
There were more deaths, and they weren't caused by poison. Can you please explain what do you mean by moments like these? I didn't get it. What? I sound really far away. Okay. So the sound is bad. Is it better now? Seeing me go pale, Mother gently placed her hand on my shoulder.
さすがにそれを聞いたら外出は許可できないわね。 そういう事情があるのなら、あのろくでなしだって休んだところで文句は言わないはずだわ。
Okay. But I still can't take a day off without letting him. Just as I was about to finish my sentence, Adolfo handed me his core transmitter. Okay. Okay. Since it sounds bad, I'll just return to how it was.
まずはここの電源を押して。
Sorry. I followed Eve's instructions and somehow got in contact with an employee at the institute. Inside the institute.
シアンさん、通信機からの連絡です。例の彼女、今日は出勤できないそうですよ。
そうか。
Scien responded calmly to the Hat's report.
もう相変わらず無関心なんですね。ちょっとは興味を示してあげないと、あの子かわいそうですよ。
Just elevation issues. Don't worry, I'll think about it later.
なんでもシュリーの方でまた変死事件が起こったらしいですよ。その影響でゴタゴタしそうだからってことみたいで。
変死事件か。この短期間で数度にわたって起きるこの状況。メモリーの専門家としてお前はどう見る？
まあ怪しいなって思いますけど、検視できなければそれ以上は何とも言えませんよね。あ、もうオチが見えてそうなので教えちゃいますけど、案の定死体の回収はできなかったそうですよ。この衛兵が回収に行ったみたいなんですけど、夜のうちにまたプチッとやられたそうです。
やったのはブローカー。あの時死んだのは別人だったということか。
どうなんですかね。今回は目撃者がいないので、彼の仕業とは言い切れないような、単なる模倣犯かもしれませんし、ブローは実は2人いたとか、あり得るかもしれませんよ。
くだらん。
Scien scoffed at the notion and headed back to his workman.
外が騒がしいですね。何かあったんでしょうか？
With a raised brow, the Hat turned on the security system to look outside.
ああ、広場のところに人が大勢集まっているみたいですね。何か騒いでいるっぽいですけど。
すぐに警備兵に対応させろ。騒音は研究の妨げになる。
詐欺まがいの血管リライバーを作った悪魔の狩猟、シアン・ブロヒワーズに鉄槌よ。シアン・ブロヒワーズに鉄槌よ。
はあ？
After leaving my message at the institute, Eve, Adolphe, and I ended up discussing the death and what the next course of action would be when we noticed a large amount of people walking noisily in front of the orphanage. Are they going to Chernival?
例の王族への抗議の集会が始まったんじゃないかな。しばらくはここにいた方がいいかも。マム、子供たちに表に出ないように言っておいた方がいい。下手したら怪我するかもしれね
ええ、今様子を見てくるわ。
If I'm not wrong, these are not parts of the Society of Exorcists. These are another group. Mother nodded and left the room. You had to pay attention. They weren't complaining about relivers being demons. They were complaining about defective relivers. But yeah, you're pretty much correct. You're not a beachy exorcist. At the very least, I would say that you're not beachy in a bad sense of that word, my dear. If they're going to protest, that means I'll have some effect on the Institute with its proximity to the castle. I hope Scien doesn't get involved. Hearing a sudden sound, we ran outside to see what was happening. A car sped toward us, almost crashing into the building, and in the driver's seat we saw...
大変です。
Mathis? I saw that he had come alone, since Jan was nowhere to be found. He quickly got out and ran toward us, out of breath.
マティス、そんなに慌ててどうしたの？
実はシアンさんが大変なんです。
Huh?
例の変死事件の犯人ってことにされて、シュディの住民にデモを起こされているんですよ。
What? Hold on a moment. What are you saying? I thought the protest was to show their discontent toward the royal family.
実は変死事件の被害者が全員リライバーであることが分かったんです。だから国立研究所でわざと血管リライバーを作ったんじゃないかってシアンさんが疑われているんです。
You can't be serious, Club says, when you have a single day off. Relatable.
単なる偶然かもしれないってのに、ずいぶん無理な話だな。しかし、セレスを犯人扱いした次は、この国の最高研究者を犯人扱いか。
まあ単なる抗議活動だし、一研究者を告発しただけでどうにかなるとは思えないけどね。そんな抗議活動すぐに収まるよ。心配だけど下手に動いたらシアンさんに迷惑がかかるから、今は黙ってることしかできないかな。
ああ。
I suppose. That does make sense, but I wonder if he really is okay. I really couldn't imagine Scien actually doing anything to cause those deaths. It was true that Scien conducted cruel experiments on the living, but it was hard to believe he would actually involve innocent citizens in his work. If he really needed to leave bodies for his experiments, he would have used the convicts first. The fact I'm thinking in such a way must mean Scien thought process is rubbing off on me. Of course, I didn't agree with his methods. I was starting to contradict myself. The only thing I could do now was look in the direction of Cerneval, and the Institute. And here, I'll have at very least a pause. I definitely need a pause. So we are having a 10 minutes break. After which, I wait for you here back. As long as you're able and willing to return. И я вернулся. Так, одну секунду. Надеюсь, меня слышно. Надеюсь, меня слышно неплохо. Надеюсь, вы тоже вернулись. Так. Что-то я не слышу ничего. Дайте-ка я проверю. Ага. I'm back. Here I am. And I hope you're here as well. Unfortunately, Eve's expectations were wrong, and the protest became worse. What started in Shadi's spread into Coin, and now the whole country was protesting. As for me, I watched in the garden of the orphanage so that I wouldn't get involved. I'm glad you decided to stay, Adolf. The children have all been scared because of the rioting.
昨日の時点でかなりの騒ぎだったからな。まさかここまで大ごとになるとは思わなかったが。
As we continued our conversation, we noticed two figures walking toward us from afar.
おはようございます。お二人。
どうもお久しぶりです。坊ちゃんがどうしてもここに来たいとダダをこねましたので。
Hello, Mathis and Jan. It had been only a day since I saw Mathis, but I hadn't seen Jan since I spoke to him at the Marche. After Jan's short greeting, he gave a bottle of wine to Adolphe in appreciation for when we were living together. Adolphe took the bottle and...
それより今日はどうしたんだ？シュディでまた何かあったのか？
いえ、そういうわけじゃないんですけど、船の方も大変なことになっていると聞いて、それにシュディにいるといろいろ心細くて。
It is right next to Chernobyl.
坊ちゃん、昨日は一睡もできなかったみたいなんですよ。
だって怖かったし。
あんな広い屋敷で二人きりだと余計にってことか。
Understandable. If things felt dangerous in Chadis, then Chernobyl must be worse. I really hope Scien is okay. Now that the thought returned, I couldn't seem to get it out of my mind. I approached John, hoping he knew a bit more about the situation. Would it be possible for us to go and see Scien?
今ですか？あまりおすすめはできませんね。あの区画は今国内で一番危険ですし、たとえ自動車で向かったとしても研究所に入れるとは思えません。
I see.
シアンさんが心配なんですか？
Yes, I know Xian's strong and I don't have to worry about him, but given the situation, there was no use in saying more, so I decided to leave it at that. Mathis lowered his gaze and thought, then quickly raised his hat.
行きましょう。
Well, as a driver such as Mathis, it is possible.
シアンさんの様子をみんなで見に行きましょう。表からは確かに無理だと思いますけど、裏口からだったら大丈夫じゃないでしょうか。裏口は通信機でダートさんにお願いすれば場所も教えてもらえるでしょうし、幸い今回は矛先がシアンさんに向けられているからこっちは自由に動けます。だから
どうしたのですか、坊ちゃん。そんな提案をするだなんて珍しい。
前そもそも抗議活動が怖くてここまで来たんだろ？
怖いのは本当です。でもここに来たのはセレスさんたちが心配だったっていうのもあるんです。だから彼女の気持ちがよく分かって、きっとシアンさんも心細い思いをしているだろうから励ましに行きたいなって。
マティス。
坊ちゃん、ご立派になられて。
気は進まないが、そういうことなら言ってみるか。
Are you sure?
ああ、心配しすぎて変な気苦労をするくらいならさっさと確かめに行った方がいい。
We decided to contact Eve and Hugo, along with the other members of the Corps, in case something happened. Thank you very much, everyone. Getting to the Institute went a lot more smoothly than expected. Okay, let me readjust myself again.
はいはい、シアンさん。お邪魔しますよ。
He's such a sweet bomb. Excuse me,
は？
with Eve and Hugo's help, and with Adolf and the others doing their best to calm the protester outside, we somehow got to the back with the hut. Mathis and Jan were explaining to the court their business in coming here, since the visit was unexpected.
お前なぜ来た？
He told me as if I should know better, but I was just worried about you, Scien. Walking through the institute, I sensed the tension was much stronger than usual. The researchers I walked past were irritated by the noise from the protests, and seems to be keeping their own conversations quiet. I hope I'm not getting in your way, but I just couldn't help myself after hearing that people were blaming you for something you didn't do.
それならデマではないぞ。
Huh?
いやー、実はこんなことになっちゃったのも、うちの研究員からの告発のせいなんですよね。
Someone turned on you? According to the hut, the relievers who were found dead turned out to be clones, created through Scien's updated system. One of the researchers disclosed it to the people of Chadis, which led to the protest. It didn't take long to figure out that the person who disclosed the information was someone on the hut's team. You can't be serious.
あ、もちろんただの偶然ですよ。仮に欠陥があったとしても、意図していなかった不具合の可能性だってありますし。とにかく、シアンさんが変死事件に関わっているという決定的な証拠はありません。状況証拠だけで疑われている感じですね。だから、シアンさんがすぐに排除されるとかは絶対にないので、安心してください。
I see. So that's what he meant by that. Cian, you really need to explain yourself more clearly. He laughed. Then he said that on purpose.
そもそもリライバーになるための誓約書には、こういった事故やトラブルがあっても文句を言うなと書いてあるはずなんだがな。
誓約書。ちゃんと読んでくれている人って少ないですよね。仮にも命に関わることなのに。
I almost felt like I had misjudged the gravity of the situation, seeing how casually they spoke about it. I'm glad to hear you're not involved in what's happening, but the situation still isn't good, is it? Scien was able to stand on the front lines of research because of his extreme talent and the results he obtained. So if people gossiped, even if it was a lie, there was some issue that even he didn't realize.
ダハトさん、ここにいたんですか。
Someone opened the unlocked door, interrupting our conversation. I turned around to see one of the researchers wearing their usual lab coat. Without asking Scien for permission to enter, he walked inside.
ああ、はい。ちょっとシアンさんの月の方を案内してて。
何をしているんですか。未来の所長がこんなところにいてはいけません。例の件の尻拭いもしなくちゃいけないですし、早く実験室まで来てください。
えあ、
Future director? I looked at Dahat, who shook his head vigorously, as if to convey that he didn't know what they were talking about. But despite his denial,
ほら、早く。
the man forcefully grabbed Dahat's hand and dragged him outside. Just before the door closed, the man glared defiantly at Scien, and then the door shut. There he goes. What did he mean by future director?
あいつも災難だな。俺をトップから引きずり下ろすための傀儡に仕立て上げられたか。
So then, Scien lazily responded that it was exactly what I suspected.
俺が今までトップでいられたのは完璧な結果を残していたからだ。例の非人道的な実験を黙認されていたのもそのため。だが今回の一件で研究所の中でも俺の研究方針に疑念を抱く者が増えてきた。つまりそうなったら次の所長として適任なのは現状ナンバー2であるダハトしかいないだろう。分かったらお前もしばらくはここへ来なくていい。俺の雑用係というだけで目の敵にされるぞ。
With everything said, Scien quickly went back to working with his usual system screen. Scien go back so naturally to his usual work. Are you sure you're not involved in the death?
ああ、一応な。原因に心当たりはあるが、俺自身が引き起こしたものではない。
He responded as he continued his work. Huh? You have a hunch?
変死事件についてだ。最初から原因自体は分かっていた。リライバーゆえに死亡したというのも間違いではない。
What do you mean? So, when you said that you wanted to get their bodies?
心当たりはあるし予想もできていたが、確証はない。だから調べたい。それだけのことだ。結局一つも死体は回収できなかったがな。
I see. If you let everyone know why the death occurred, we could have prevented them. I eyed him in a way that he would know what I was thinking, but he responded that the royal family would just hide the fact. I can see that, but still. No. I should stop. It's not like Scien caused death, so I should take what I know and leave it at that. But those strange deaths haven't happened since then. So why the politics now? Scien gave an amused scoff, as if he had a hunch or two about that too.
別派閥の者が俺を失脚させようとしたのかもしれないし、先日のことを根に持った王族が報復のために情報を流したのかもしれない。王族なら研究員から情報を得ていたとしても不思議はないからな。何にせよ、変死事件に関して誰もが納得するような解決方法は持ち合わせていない。どちらかというとダハトたちの派閥の専門だからな。
Dahat's field? Which means the death, the hearts. Does it have something to do with the memory?
国家機密だ。いつか公になる日が来るかもしれんが、今はその時じゃない。
Scien had an expression that said he likely didn't mind disclosing what he knew, but he also knew it would be hidden away.
どちらにせよ誰かが介入さえしなければ、ああも一斉に起きるはずがない事件だった。故に本格的にリライバーたちの体がいじられている可能性が高い。
So someone working here? Scien turned off the screen, as our conversation must have gone on long enough. Seeing him look at me, I returned his look with one of relief. I'm relieved to hear it. So your experiments had nothing to do with those deaths.
当たり前だろう。仮にやるとしても騒ぎにならないようにやる。少し勘違いしているようだが、俺は無益な犠牲は出さん。悪趣味をあえて人に見せつける思考もない。以前お前に見せた実験も必要だからこそ行い、公にする意味がないから秘匿していた。
I felt a lot better now. Scien was honest and straightforward. Of course, it didn't mean that his heart was honest. It was just that he had logic to back him up. He was fine with becoming a villain as long as he could accomplish his objective. That was just how he worked. That's right. He was always like this from the start. He's definitely not a good person, but he would never hide himself. Which was the very reason why I decided to return to Scien.
遅くなって悪い。少し手間取った。
表の人たちとの交渉に時間がかかっちゃってね。
で、ちゃんと事情は聞けたのか？
Yes, I was able to talk to him.
どうやってここまで来た？研究所のセキュリティはそこまで甘くないはずだが。
表の抗議活動を一旦落ち着かせたお礼にダハトが手を回してくれたんです。
Eve innocently showed his past as he explained how they got access to the lab.
で、結局変死事件の真相はどうだった？シアンの仕業じゃないんだろ？
Yes, that's right. It seems someone planning to blame on Scien. Someone's pinning the blame on Scien. I quickly explained to the three of them what I heard earlier.
なかなか難しい状況だな。
特にダハトがシアンさんと一緒に行動しづらいのは困ったね。このままだと孤立してしまうかもしれない。
何も問題はない。少々動きづらくなる程度だ。
いや、そうは言ってもな。
Seeing Hugo's frown, I stated my idea. Is it okay if I stay here a little longer?
は？
Scien's surprised voice was accompanied by everyone's startled expressions. It just scares me. I have a feeling something terrible is going to happen to Scien. So I thought maybe I could continue working for him and help keep an eye on his surroundings.
危険すぎる。いつシアンが襲われるとも限らないんだぞ。
珍しく同意見だな。それにお前のような小娘なんてむしろ足手まといになる。
いや、悪くない案じゃないか。
なんだと？
そもそもあんた、今までも命を狙われてきたんだよな。今回だって絶対狙われるはずだ。だったら護衛はつけておいた方がいい。
He's right. There is no telling whether someone might try to poison your food. I did my best to agree with Hugo's reliable support. Seeing me jump on the opportunity, Adolphe let out a huge sigh, as if he knew I wasn't changing my mind.
なら、食事とか身の回りのことはセレスに監視してもらって、その他の物理的な護衛は俺たちがする。そこが落としどころだ。
He went and offered a compromise.
今の状況なら確かにそれが最善だ。殺された時に備えてバックアップを取ったとしても、そのデータごと削除されるだろうしな。 今ある命を有効に使う必要はある。だがこの娘は必要ないだろう。毒味程度なら自分でもできるし、もしもの時に足手まといになる。
I couldn't argue against him, as the memory of being taken hostage by the Hut subordinate returned to mind. Well, Scien did say that he was able to fend off the assassin that attacked him before. I guess there isn't really anything I can do to help.
セレスは一緒にいた方がいいと思います。
Just as I was about to give up, he finally spoke up from behind me to push me on.
もしチアンさんの無実が晴れたとして、民衆が次に原因だと当たるのは死神と呼ばれている彼女でしょ。シアンさんの身を守るのと同時に彼女の身も守れるのならいい作戦だと思いますけど。
It wasn't an obvious attempt to persuade him. It was simply offering a proposal in his usual casual tone. At that, Scien began to think deeply, like never before, and after a few seconds of silence,
好きにしろ。
he nodded nonchalantly. Thank you very much. I'll do my best to not get in your way, Scien. A new day began, and Adolphe and the others began the task of working as bodyguards. There was always at least one person with Scien, so that he was never left alone. We began our rounds through the area away from where the guards were stationed, to make sure there was no suspicious activity. Of course, any obvious behavior would only attract the attention of the researchers and the royal family. If there was something unfortunate, it was that I couldn't go back to the orphanage with everyone here focused on guarding us. I felt bad saying it, but I decided to lie to Mother so that she wouldn't worry. I was terminated from Scien's employment, but I need to still make money to make amends, so I'm working at Matthis Manor as his maid now. Nah. A few days passed as we continued our monitoring. As expected, Scien's situation didn't improve and was in fact getting worse.
ここもダメか。
Scien brought me to the secret laboratory that he showed me that night. He tried to gain access like before, but for some reason the door didn't unlock. Why isn't it opening?
簡単なことだ。俺が勝手に実験できないように権限を取り上げたんだろう。
Scien muttered disinterestedly that it was probably the doing of the royal family. But Scien, you're the one who established this facility in order to fight the curse. I can't believe they resorted to such measures just to isolate you.
だから以前にも言っただろう。この研究所では様々な思惑が交錯していると。ほら、早速お出ましだぞ。
I turned around to find the Hut was walking toward us with a crowd of researchers behind him. But for some reason, the Hut who was standing in the center wasn't his usual jolly self.
アラートが鳴ったからどこの誰が侵入してきたのかと思いきや、シアンさん、もういい加減にしてくれませんか？あれだけ証拠が揃っているあなたに研究をさせるような余裕、うちの研究所にはないんですよ。研究がしたいんだったら実質の必要最小限の設備を使って行ってください。
Scien was blamed and looked down upon without a chance of rebuttal. The only person in the group of researchers who was actually cringing was the Hut. The Hut. I stepped forward and spoke his name. I know we're not able to fully clear his name of the accusations, but isn't it possible to at least give Scien some leeway here. I mean, Scien is still the director. In response to my request, the Hut
す
responded
みません
with a quiet apology. Huh?
そういうわけなので今後は気をつけてくださいでは失礼します
He lowered his head a bit nervously, then left with his subordinates. All I could do was watch him from behind in utter disbelief.
あいつも複雑な立場だからああいうしかないんだろう。そもそも研究員のほとんどは俺の潔白を信じていない。そんな中ダハトが俺をかばったりしたら組織で内部分裂が起こって崩壊するだろうな。
So the Hut is in a tight situation himself. As we headed back to Cian's room, he mentioned that it would give him time to focus without worrying about politics. I could tell he wasn't trying to put up a front, and was just being honest about the situation. But it still feels weird to me. Cian's way of doing things was conducting all sorts of experiments at his own pace. So something didn't feel right when I saw him unable to work on what he wanted. Upon returning to his room, he quickly sat in his usual chair and began to fidget with bright screen. He freely moved about the light, the working behind which still were mystery to me. His multicolored eyes gleamed a bit upon receiving the brilliance of the panel. I had seen it many times, but including Scien, the sight was so beautiful and phantasmal.
何を見ている？
Huh? Was I staring?
そこまで凝視されればさすがに気づく。書かれていることの半分も理解できないだろうに、見ていて何の意味がある？
Well, I'm glad you're back. And first of all, I'm glad that you're in a better condition because I wish your condition to be better. I was relieved that he didn't notice I was actually staring at him. What reason? Well, I was just thinking of how sophisticated reliable technology is. I mean, even the screen of light. The system you touch looks like something from a fairy tale scene.
おとぎ話か。非論理的な側面のみで考えれば確かにそうかもしれないな。
Is Arbashel the only country that employs this kind of technology?
今のところはそうだろうな。だが他国では時を遡るという非現実的で不可思議な研究があるらしい。
Back in time? You mean back to the past?
ああ。漂流者が残した本はそういった高等無形な記述も。
入るぞ。
Adolphe, how is everything? Are you finished with your rounds?
ああ、お前もな。一旦施設に戻るから一応顔を見に来たんだが、お前は今日も泊まり込む気か？
Well, that was the plan.
ダメだと言いたいところだが、どうせ言っても聞かないんだろ。ほら。
With that, Adolphe brought out a large basket filled with a variety of ingredients. Inside were a bunch of freshly picked vegetables that he had grown in his garden. Oh my, I can make something really good with these. Thank you, Adolphe.
その荷物、ここに置くつもりか？
そのつもりだが、何か問題あったか？少しでも目を離したら毒を盛られるかもしれねえだろ。
ならせめて邪魔にならないところに置いておけ。
Yes, of course.
それじゃあ俺はクーネに戻る。何かあったらすぐにイブかヒューゴに声をかけろよ。
Yes, thank you. I can make a lot of different sandwiches with these.
ああ。
セレス、いるか？
Relatable, Club, relatable. Just as was about to lift the basket up, next came Hugo through the door. Hugo, has anything happened?
実はシスターから荷物を預かっててな。
A pillow?
そうなんだよ。慣れた枕じゃないと安眠できないだろうからってことでさ。寝具はちゃんと用意されているから大丈夫って言ったんだが、それでも押し付けられて。
I see. I'm very sorry for the trouble. I must be really stressing mother out right now. As I took the familiar pillow, I thought about how I should apologize to her when I returned.
預かったものは確かに渡したぞ。それじゃあ、俺はこれで。
Okay. Thank you very much, Hugo.
食材の次は寝具か。どんどん俺の部屋が侵食されていくな。
Yes. I'm sorry. I'll make sure none of it gets in the way of your research.
セレス、いる？
Scien gave an obvious look of disgust upon seeing a third visitor come in a row. Yes, I am.
どうしたの？なんだか二人とも変な顔をしているけど。
お前、表で残りの二人に会っていないか？
いえ、特にすれ違っていないですけど、俺たち広い範囲をカバーするために別々に行動しているんで。
そうか。
Scien looked up to the ceiling in disbelief at the almost perfect series of coincidences. So, what brings you here, Eve?
今から護衛として部屋の前にいるから挨拶しておこうと思って。あと、ちょっとした差し入れも持ってきたんだ。
That Eve brought out a basket covered by white cloth. Eve smiled and proceeded to take off the cloth to reveal that the basket was stuffed with egg tarts. The crispy tart dough and hard, beautifully baked cream looked absolutely delicious, but the thought of Eve's baking these himself made me and Scien go completely pale. I looked at Scien and saw that he was keeping his distance from the egg tarts, probably more afraid of them than assassins. They look so delicious. Are you sure we can have all this? I asked in a trembling voice.
もちろん、護衛で疲れてるだろうから甘いものでも食べて気分転換して。クーネで人気のお店のものなんだ。
A famous bakery? Which means Eve wasn't the one who made them. On second thought, there was no way that Eve had time to bake them since he was so busy patrolling. I let out a sigh of relief as I regained my composure and accepted the basket. Thank you very much. Scien and I will enjoy them later.
喜んでくれてよかった。シアンさんの口にも合うといいんですけど、他に困ったことはない？必要なものがあれば、また明日買ってくるよ。
I'm fine for now. Adolphe and Hugo gave me a lot of things too. Craving cherry smoothies. Sounds tasty.
そっか。じゃあ俺、しばらく外にいるから、何かあったら声をかけてね。
Yes, and you be careful, Eve. With that, Eve waved his hand as he stepped out of the room. After seeing him leave, Scien frowned hard and stared at me, or rather glared at me. He must be angry because of the commotion.
お前。
Yes. As I stood stiff and braced for what was to come, Scien got up from his chair and walked toward me. He stopped in front of me and slowly began to speak.
あの中に意中の男がいるのか？
Huh? For a moment, I couldn't understand what he was asking. Interested? Wait, did he mean... is he asking me whether I have romantic feelings for Sam? I didn't expect him to ask such a thing after the current flow of events. As I blinked my eyes in surprise, Scien looked closer at my face.
で、どうなんだ？
Well, I'm not sure how to respond, but I've never seen Adolphe or the others in that way before.
では、意中の男はいないと？
I'm glad that he wasn't completely exhausted, and it's good that now you're cleansed. I don't believe they do.
そうか。
Scien responded nonchalantly, but I noticed that the tension of his grimace seemed to relax somewhat.
では、もう一つ聞こうが。
Yes? What is it?
どうして俺の元に残ろうと思った？
Well...
特にこの状況では、お前にメリットは一切ない。自分の身に危険が及ぶとは思わなかったのか？
I told him I was worried about him, but that might not be the answer he was looking for. What could I gain from protecting Scien? It sounded as if he was asking me to show me the greed that others humans felt. Oof. Okay. I actually look up to you, Scien.
憧れだと。
Yeah, they're such friends. Yes, after all, you always keep to your convictions. You're the opposite of me, so I think I envy you for being so strong. Maybe I'm hoping to become someone like you through helping you with your work. Then again, that would mean that I'm trying to use you for my own gain. That's sad. I guess the main reason is that you ordered me to work for you, and it's an honor for me to be your mate, so I don't want to leave you alone. Your reputation is adamant lost. You can believe that much. I couldn't explain exactly what led me to think in such a way. The only thing I knew was... And why so anti-Scien when he's such a sweet daddy? Okay. It was cringy. My daily life was a scary looking person who saw me for who I was. I'm looking at his different parts. I wanted that life back. I can't explain my reasoning so that I could understand myself too.
なんだ、今度は聖女様気取りか。
Uh-huh?
悲劇ぶったことを言ったかと思えば、今度は一人ぼっちで哀れな人を放っておけないときたものだ。死神、悲劇の少女、聖女様と役がコロコロ変わって忙しいな。
That's not my intention. I simply want to be of help, Scien.
言っておくが、俺はお前が思っているほどかわいそうな人間じゃない。孤独に慣れているし、それを嫌だと思ったことはない。今の状況だって気にしていない。 まあ実験室が使えないのは面倒だがな。
Scien took a step forward, then another. He slowly pushed me to a dark corner of the room until I felt the cold wall behind me.
だからお前の境遇と重ねて勝手に哀れむな。シンプルに。俺と共にいたいからと言えばいい。簡単に言えば、お前は俺に情を抱いているのだろ
う？ My cheeks went red as he whispered it in my ear.
それがどういう種類のものなのかは一切興味がないし知る必要もない。だが、俺は感情を持てと強要されることは嫌いだが、他人が持つこと自体は否定しない。鬱陶しくなければ向けられることも忌避しない。特にお前のような気に入った雑用係ならな。
Scien, his words made me think. Why was I trying to stay by his side, despite everything happening around him? As I felt as though I had an idea of why now.
ただし、見返りは求めるな。俺はお前に返すような感情は絶対に持たない。無駄だからな。
Just when I started feeling a heat inside me, his words ended up causing my heart pain. This was the best proof that the emotions I felt for him were exactly what he thought. So, I actually like Scien? As a man? I couldn't deny it anymore. No matter how horrible a person Scien was. I couldn't keep away from him, nor did I want to. He didn't evaluate me from a bird's eye view. He looked straight at me and saw exactly who I was. I loved the beauty of his view, which was reflected in my own eyes. But even if this was how I felt toward him, it's no use. I didn't have the right to feel that way, and Scien had no intention of feeling anything. I'm glad that he was nothing like Scien. It's unlikely that you could do worse. Still, it seemed like Scien was waiting for me to say something. I wasn't sure what he wanted me to say. Needing to say something, I slowly opened my mouth as my heartbeat echoed. But before I could say anything, I heard footsteps approaching. The sound could be heard through the wall. Scien clicked his tongue and turned around.
ちょっと待って、何なんですかいきなり。勝手に入らないで。
I could hear Eve doing his best as a guard, but a few seconds later...
シアン・ブロフィアーズだな。ここ最近施した王族のリライバー化について事情を聞かせてもらおうか。
Countless royal guard soldiers barged into the room. Even if we had guards, it would be no use with all the soldiers in this small room. We ended up being dragged out of the room by the royal guard. We were at least not bound like criminals, due in part to Eve and Hugo, who tried to keep the soldiers at bay. I believe you're still hot. And, well, there is some beauty in the dying man. Why are so many of them here anyway? There was something ominous about the situation.
こんなところで共倒れになるのはごめんだぞ。
大丈夫。木を見てみんなで脱出しよう。
Hearing them whisper to each other, Scien was looking at his fingers with boredom. We followed the soldiers into the joint laboratory to find. A man was on the laboratory table, suffering in pain. It looked like he was struggling to breathe. Each time he tried to take a breath, I could hear the air passing through his throat. Wait, it's the same man who broke the incubator. Something wasn't right. He looked relatively healthy back then. But now he was in so much pain that he looked like he was about to die.
なんでこいつがここにいる？こいつのリライバーは作れないようにしてあるから、こんなところへ来ても無駄だぞ。死にかけているのなら病院にでも担ぎ込むんだな。
ふざけるな！お前が閣下をこのようにしたのだろう。我々が聞きたいのはそんなことではない。閣下はつい先日リライバーとして転生したばかりだ。
Became a reliver? I gasped in surprise, seeing that the man no longer had the bruise Scien left on his cheek.
どういうことだ？俺はこいつのリライバー化など許可していないぞ。誰がデータのブロックを解除した？
しらばっくれるな！お前の実験に付き合うのならと閣下の転生を許可したそうじゃないか。しかし新たな体に乗り換えてから閣下は肺に異常を抱えてしまったようで、死の呪いをさらに強めたような症状にずっと悩まされているのだ。このままでは命さえも危ない。もう一度閣下を転生させろ。
Scien didn't say a word in response to the soldier's demand. He took a step forward and checked the man's chest and throat to assess his breathing. His cold, inorganic gaze was fixed on the man's chest. Scien observed the man for a few seconds, then raised his head.
どこのバカがあのデータを勝手に使った？
どういうことだよ？
どうも何も言葉通りだ。研究所の誰かが試作段階のデータを使ってご親切にもこいつをリライバーにしたんだ。あれは試作段階の上副作用があるというのに。
Side effects? Before I could ask him what they were? The man's suffering was getting worse.
閣下、気を確かに。
Can't you turn him into a reliver?
無理だ。こいつが装置を壊したから今はリライバー化の作業が忙しい。培養機の空きもないだろう。このまま死ぬのを待つしかないな。
The man twisted and turned his agony. After spewing out blood, he stopped moving completely. His bloodshot eyes were wide open and unblinking. At this very moment, a member of the royal Evermore family had passed away.
閣下！やはり今の症状は。
The soldier started to move at once. Some tried to revive him, and others turned on their transmitters. And some began devising a plan in all the commotion.
まずい。このままだとシアンさんが責任を押し付けられそうだ。今のうちにここを離れた方がいいかもしれないね。
I've never enjoyed going out there. And it doesn't have much to do with the way I look.
ああ、それが良さそうだ。
アルペシェールの全国民よ、聞け。今、この瞬間に王族の中でも信心深く、最も愛されていた男が息を引き取った最古のリライバー、シアン・ブロフィワーズに殺されたのだ。
Where did that coming from? The voice sounded like it was coming from the Institute speakers connected to a transmitter. A voice sounding as if it belonged to another royal began being blamed on Scien.
おい、まずいぞ。今の声、研究所内だけじゃなくて国中に流れてる。
What?
そうか。国内中に放送を聞かせるためのスピーカーがある。それを使っているのか。
罪深きシアン・ブロフィワーズはフローン体にわざと血管を仕込むことで我々国民を実験体扱いしてきた。いや、クローン体のみじゃない、リライバーと化していない国民さえも彼にとっては実験体そのものなのだ。研究所から秘密裏に入手した資料によれば、ブロフィワーズ家はそうした人体実験を長年続けてきたという。つまりブロフィワーズ家こそがこの国に死の呪いを広めた張本人、死神。奴らは長年自らが招いた呪いを解くふりをしてこの国を牛耳っていたのだ。実際研究所では一部の者しか知らされていない非人道的な実験も行われていたらしい。かわいそうに実験体となった者は皆死んだ。つまり我々が年老いる前に命を散らすのも、感情が欠落した不自然な生命体に転生せざるを得ないのも、全てはブロフィワーズ家のせいだ。
The royal speech continued as we tried to get a grasp on what was going on. The content was so baseless and unreasonable that we could only listen in stunned silence. If this is being heard by the citizens of the country, even a child could easily predict the chaos to follow. Scien, we need to escape now. Before I could tug on his sleeve, the hut and some researchers appeared. Of course, I'm sure the hut will be able to prove that Scien is innocent.
シアン・ブロフィワーズ、あなたを永久的に研究所から追放します。また現国王からのことづけです。王族殺しの滞在人としてあなたの処刑が決まりました。
Huh? Scien's expression didn't change, even after hearing his death sentence. The royal guard slowly closed in upon hearing the sentence from the hut. He and Hugo drew their swords, but they were outnumbered in a confined space. Seeing them protecting me and Scien, a shadow fell upon the hut's face.
すみません、シアンさん。さすがに僕も王族の命令には逆らえないんです。それに
really.
あなたがいなくなれば感情メモリーの研究を進めることができる。この機会を逃すなんてできません。だから僕は僕のためにあなたをトップから引きずり下ろします。延命だけを目的としたリライバーなんてもういりません。これからはれっきとした人間を作るために尽力します。
そうか。だが俺の命はやれないな。
A large large blade hovered in front of my eyes. It was one of the swords that Scien kicked out of the hand of one of the soldiers. The hut and the rest looked on in shock, not understanding what happened in that moment.
Hugo! ああ、わかってる。
Well, I'm glad that you don't want him to die, even out of love hate. Eve and Hugo used the blunt ends of their swords to knock the soldiers out cold.
行くぞ、雑用係。
Okay. We quickly ran through the opening. It would be easy if we could simply keep running the exit, but seeing that we were making a run for it, some of the soldiers began to make chase.
仕方ない。
Scien took out a few small orbs from inside his skull and tossed them behind us. Suddenly, the soldiers were blown back after a huge explosion. White smoke began to rise, hiding us from their view. Were those explosives?
いざという時のために用意しておいたが、まさかこんな形で役に立つとはな。
おいおい、よかったのか？あんな派手な爆発だと研究機材とか中にいた奴らがやばいんじゃ。
投げたのは研究室の前だ。よほど運が悪くない限り大丈夫だろう。それより今のうちに逃げるぞ。
Okay. With Scien's motion, we quickly escaped from the chaos of the laboratory. A number of soldiers did attack us along the way, but even Hugo mowed them down easily. We finally reached the back entrance, just as we thought we made it. In the confusion and clamor of the facility, we could hear strangely clear footsteps. Coming into view was... What? The person we thought was dead. Boro appeared in front of us like a ghost.
なんでこいつがここに？あの時死んだんじゃなかったのか？
わからない。でも戦いを避けては通れなさそうだな。
後ろからもいつ追っ手が来るかわからん。やるしかない。雑用係、お前は巻き込まれないように下がっていろ。
Okay. Immediately. Before I could even see them preparing for battle, Boro leapt in to attack.
重い。
Eve barely stopped the strike from above. But Boro was so powerful that Eve could only slide his weapon away. Using the opportunity, Scien leapt high into the air. He dropped his heels, but he missed the mark. Hugo joined in the fray, but even the three of them were unable to get past Boro's spinning halberd.
こいつやっぱり強すぎる。
こうなったらもう一度これを使うしかないな。
Scien took out the orbs he had so that only we could see them.
それ聞きますかね。
煙幕代わりにはなるだろう。黙って一旦下がれ。
Well, yes, as long as it's not about tight space. With Scien's voice, the two quickly moved back, and then the explosive flew. The entire hallway was filled with smoke. The attack must have been expected, as Boro's frail body was taken off balance. The three of them moved in using the opportunity, but Boro, covered in dust and soot, quickly raised his halberd before they could charge in and swung it straight onto the floor in front. The floor seems to shriek in pain, perhaps aided by the impact of the explosion. No! Before I could scream, the floor crumbled. A huge gaping hole appeared in its place and sucked in debris to its depth. Even Hugo were able to leap back out of the hole breach. Scien tried to do the same, but Burrow wouldn't let this happen. As he fell, he quickly grabbed onto Scien's ankle to drag him down. Scien's body leaned toward the hole. Scien, grab my hand! He looked at me as I reached out toward him and
行け
he refused to take hold of my hand. He fell into the darkness with Burha. And on that cliffhanger, I will end my today's stream. Thank you for staying with me. It was a pleasure to have all and every single one of you today. I'm grateful. Please take care of yourself. To the best of your abilities. And, well, okay, let's see who we can rate. Let's see. No. Now these. Now these. And that's also someone finishing the stream. Okay, let me just rate him again. Okay, again, thank you. I'll be grateful if you'll stream